Chapter 1. Singularity. Singularity refers to a point in mathematics where a function or equation is undefined or diverges to infinity. For example, x equals 0 in the above function is a singularity where the function is undefined or diverges to infinity. This graph represents the function f of x equals 1 over x. As the value of x approaches 0, the value of the function increases explosively and approaches infinity. The function is undefined at x equals 0 and diverges to infinity. This point is called the singularity. In science, a singularity refers to a future period during which the pace of technological change will be so rapid, its impact so deep, that human life will be irreversibly transformed. Ray Kurzweil, a Google deep learning engineering director and futurist, predicted AI models like ChatGPT 30 years ago, earning him the nickname, the modern Nostradamus. Predictions about the timing of the singularity vary among scholars, but Kurzweil estimates that it will occur around 2045. Emergent ability refers to a phenomenon in AI models where untrained behaviors or unexpected new functions suddenly emerge without any clear reason. For example, an AI might write and modify code that surpasses previous limitations without specific instructions on programming languages. This suggests that AI could increasingly develop flexibility and adaptability similar to humans, and such emergent abilities could potentially accelerate the arrival of the singularity. When predicting the singularity, Kurzweil uses Moore's law as one of the key foundations. A transistor, a small component that processes information, enables a semiconductor chip to perform faster and handle more tasks as the number of transistors increases. In 1965, Gordon Moore predicted that the number of transistors in a semiconductor chip would double every 2 years. If there was 1 transistor in the first year, there would be 2 after 2 years, 4 after 4 years, 8 after 6 years, and 16 after 8 years, continuing to increase exponentially. This means that computing power would advance rapidly. While Moore's law has been a guiding principle for semiconductor development over the past 50 years, many believe its pace is now slowing. However, it is not entirely invalid, as innovative technologies like quantum computers are driving performance improvements in new ways. Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near, represents the transhumanism, which is the idea that humans will transcend their physical and mental limitations through technology. In the book, he argues that the combination of biotechnology, nanotechnology, and artificial intelligence will enhance the human body and brain. He also mentions the potential for curing physical diseases, extending lifespans, and even transcending death by digitalizing consciousness. He predicts that nanobots in our brains will connect directly to the cloud, allowing instant access to knowledge, and even enabling consciousness to be uploaded into the system. He believes that by uploading the human mind into a computer system, we could transcend the limitations of the biological body and potentially achieve immortality. Uploading a human brain means scanning all of its salient details and then reinstantiating those details into a suitably powerful computational substrate. This process would capture a person's entire personality, memory, skills, and history. Nanorobot communication will provide us with the opportunity to greatly boost our pattern recognition abilities, memories, and overall thinking capacity, as well as to directly interface with powerful forms of non-biological intelligence. We can expect that the full realization of the biotechnology and nanotechnology revolutions will enable us to eliminate virtually all medical causes of death. Software-based humans will live out on the web, projecting bodies whenever they need or want them, including virtual bodies in diverse realms of virtual reality, holographic bodies, foglet projected bodies, and physical bodies comprising nanobot swarms and other forms of nanotechnology. To understand today's zeitgeist better, it is important to examine the philosophical context in which transhumanism is situated, and the influences it has inherited from earlier philosophies. Next is a simplified chronological summary of key Western philosophical ideas from the past 100 years to help contextualize these developments. Chapter 2: Existentialism. Existentialism is a philosophical movement developed between the late 19th and early 20th centuries, focusing on the nature of human existence and the meaning of life. The term existence refers not only to the state of physically being, but also to the purpose or function of that existence. According to existentialism, human beings are inherently without meaning or purpose. They simply exist. It emphasizes the responsibility of individuals to create their own meaning. Moreover, existentialism values existential experiences such as anxiety, loneliness, suffering, and death, which prompt individuals to contemplate the meaning of their existence. Existentialist thinkers argue that humans discover their existence and freely choose their life's meaning through confronting these experiences. They challenge traditional philosophy, universal truths, and theological norms. In the 4th century BCE, Aristotle's philosophy asserted that all beings possess a purpose, or telos. For instance, a seed's purpose is to become a tree, and a human's purpose is to live rationally. Similarly, in a Christian worldview, the essence of humanity is determined by God's plan, with existence secondary to this essence. However, existentialism rejects reliance on moral standards, emphasizing instead the importance of individual choice and personal responsibility as the essence of true freedom. While earlier philosophies also valued freedom and choice, they did not equate freedom with the mere ability to do whatever one wishes. In the traditional Christian perspective, freedom meant liberation from the desires of sin and the influence of Satan. Jean-Paul Sartre encapsulates existentialism with the statement, "Existence precedes essence." This core idea suggests that humans are born without a predefined essence or purpose bestowed by God, and must create their own purpose and meaning through choices. Here is an example comparing earlier philosophies with existentialism. Pre-existentialist view: a person's essence and role, such as becoming a politician or leader, are determined before birth. Existence precedes essence. Existentialist view: a person determines their role, whether to become a politician, teacher, or something else, through their choices and actions after birth. Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher who greatly influenced existentialism, famously said, "God is dead." It does not mean that God has ceased to exist. Rather, it is a philosophical declaration that the absolute authority and belief in God in Western culture no longer holds significant meaning. Following the death of God, Nietzsche argued that humans must create their own values and meaning. He introduced the concept of the Übermensch, Superman, emphasizing that humans must transcend traditional values and constraints to freely lead their lives and create new values. While existentialism is predominantly atheistic, there were theistic existentialists like Søren Kierkegaard before the rise of atheistic existentialism. Theistic existentialists, unlike atheistic ones, believed humans have a purpose given by God and must discover and live according to it. Before the development of existentialist thought, the meaning and purpose of human life were typically defined by religious authorities, clergy, or scholarly doctrines. Kierkegaard criticized rational and logical attempts to understand human existence. Instead, he emphasized subjective experiences of encountering God as a solitary individual, described as standing alone before God in anxiety and despair. He believed that individuals should not rely on external theoretical norms, but rather choose their existence and purpose through a personal relationship with God. The following is a comparison of traditional, theistic, and atheistic existentialism. Traditional theistic view: God's will was determined by norms or doctrines set by religious authorities, and individuals were expected to follow these rules, such as thou shalt not kill. Theistic existentialism. One should not blindly follow the rule, thou shalt not kill. Instead, through inner faith and a personal relationship with God, one chooses to practice this norm freely. Atheistic existentialism. Since God does not exist, individuals are not obligated to follow the rule, thou shalt not kill, unless they personally believe it is right. Individuals must make authentic and responsible choices, and they must take full responsibility for the consequences of those choices. Man is condemned to be free. Chapter 3. Structuralism. Structuralism began in the 1910s with Ferdinand de Saussure's lectures on linguistics and reached its peak in the 1950s and 1960s. During this time, it expanded into various fields through the work of scholars such as Claude Lévi-Strauss, anthropology, Roland Barthes, literature, and Jacques Lacan, psychology. Structuralism is a philosophical and academic approach that seeks to explain human thought, behavior, and socio-cultural phenomena through unseen structures like language, rules, and relationships. Before Saussure, from ancient times to the 19th century, language was seen as a tool for conveying fixed meanings. Saussure rejected this traditional view, arguing that language is not fixed, but a dynamic system where meaning is continuously generated through relationships between words. Saussure divided the linguistic sign into the signifier and the signified, arguing that their relationship is neither natural nor necessary but arbitrary. For example, there is no inherent reason why the word apple refers to a fruit. It is simply a result of social agreement. Here, the word apple itself is the signifier, and the concept of the fruit it represents is the signified. The term arbitrary is a translation of the French word arbitraire, which means determined freely, or based on agreement, but does not imply random or disorderly. Saussure used this term to emphasize that the relationship between the signifier and the signified is not a natural necessity, but one defined by social convention. Following example demonstrates how the meaning of a word can change depending on social agreements and context. The English word apple, which originally referred to a fruit, but now also signifies a computer company that makes devices like the iPhone. Additionally, Saussure argued that the meaning of a word is defined through its relationship to the entire linguistic system and its differences from other words. For instance, the word apple does not have an independent meaning. Its meaning is formed through contrasts and comparisons with other words. When compared to pear or grape, the unique characteristics of apple become clearer. An apple is firmer and more tart compared to a pear and larger and heavier than a grape. These differences highlight the specific features of the fruit, making the meaning of the word apple more distinct. Saussure suggested that even if we do not consciously compare a word with others, its meaning is already formed within the linguistic structure through its differences from other words. Chapter 4. Postmodernism. Postmodernism is a philosophical and cultural movement that emerged in the mid-20th century. It challenges the idea of absolute truths or universal values, emphasizing pluralism and relativism. Rather than presenting specific answers or definitive claims, postmodernism focuses on questioning established norms and truths. It rejects the notion of fixed meanings or truths, considering all truth and meaning as relative. As a result, statements like, "this is the truth," or "this is how things must be," are deemed invalid. The following is an example comparing existentialism, one of the earlier philosophies, with postmodernism. Existentialism claims that individuals must define their own meaning, such as saying, "the purpose of my life is to gain knowledge." Postmodernism, however, questions concepts like, what is the self? What do knowledge, life, and purpose mean? Are these meanings consistent, or do they vary by context? It argues that fixed definitions cannot exist, and meanings are always subject to change. Postmodernism. Number 1. Poststructuralism. Both structuralism and post-structuralism acknowledge that the meaning of language can change. However, structuralism views the meaning of language as relatively stable within a framework of social consensus, whereas post-structuralism argues that linguistic systems are inherently unstable, and meanings can vary depending on the interpreter. Here is an example illustrating the difference between structuralism and post-structuralism. Structuralism. The word apple originally referred to fruit, but now signifies a computer company. The meaning of computer company has stabilized through social consensus. Post-structuralism. While Apple has shifted to mean a computer company, even this meaning can vary depending on cultural interpretation or personal perspective. For some, Apple symbolizes innovation, while for others, it represents capitalism. Meaning is never fixed and always holds the potential for varied interpretations based on context and individual perspective. In 1967, Roland Barthes declared in his essay *The Death of the Author* that the author's intent no longer determines the meaning of a text. Traditionally, a literary work's meaning was believed to depend on the author's intentions. Barthes instead emphasized the role of the reader, suggesting that meaning emerges independently and diversely through interpretation. Initially, Barthes aligned with structuralism, believing that the meaning of literature was shaped by structural and social contexts. Later, he moved beyond this view, claiming that meaning becomes fluid and diverse during the reader's interpretive process. Here is the difference between structuralism and post-structuralism in regards to literary works. Structuralism. How does the work create meaning within language and culture? In this case, the focus is on social and linguistic structures. Post-structuralism. How does an individual interpret the work? In this case, the focus is on individual interpretation and subjectivity. Postmodernism. Number 2, Deconstruction. Deconstruction is a philosophical approach that seeks to dismantle the fixed meanings of language and concepts, revealing the contradictions and incompleteness behind them. It was led by Jacques Derrida, and through efforts to deconstruct binary opposition structures such as male, female, and mind-body, it presents the view that meaning is not fixed, but relative, infinitely expandable, and capable of change. Derrida developed his theory as a critique of structuralism. In structuralist view, apple is defined as a central concept in contrast with peripheral concepts such as pear or grape. However, Derrida argued that while we can define the difference between apple and pear, this difference is infinite and can be expanded more subtly, so the definition of meaning is constantly delayed and never fully fixed. In other words, the meaning of apple does not end with its difference from other fruits, but can also symbolize the temptation of the forbidden fruit in the Bible, or represent beauty, health, or freshness. This is how deconstruction of meaning occurs. Derrida called this difference and delay difference, meaning that the center of apple is never fixed because it is affected by difference, and it can take on various peripheral meanings such as forbidden fruit, beauty, and freshness. These meanings can infinitely change and expand depending on cultural, social, and historical contexts. Postmodernism. Number 3. Baudrillard's concept of simulacra. Simulacra is a concept introduced by Jean Baudrillard, referring to replicas that don't directly copy the original, but gradually lose their connection to it and exist independently. Baudrillard argued that people accept images formed by the mass media as reality, no longer comparing those images to the original or true reality. In other words, mass media distorts the authenticity and objectivity of reality, creating a new form of fake reality called simulacra that replaces the real world. The concept of simulacra rejects the traditional idea of absolute and objective reality, connecting to postmodernism, by asserting that reality, replicated through images and symbols, replaces the true reality. Here is an example of simulacra. Many people post beautiful photos taken on vacation, pictures of delicious food, or themselves dressed up on Instagram, only selecting images that make them appear their best. The pain, imperfections, and flaws of life are often hidden or presented in a perfectly edited form. These edited images do not represent the self as it truly is, but rather create a virtual self in a simulated reality, or a simulacrum. According to postmodernism, the process of creating a virtual self blurs the boundary between reality and the virtual. This blurring affects both the subject creating the virtual self and the other who views it. For example, a person who posts a perfect photo on social media might start to feel that the image of themselves in the photo is their true self. In this case, the subject experiences difficulty distinguishing between their virtual self and their real self. Moreover, the viewer may try to distinguish between the virtual image created by the subject and the reality, but the boundary becomes unclear, making it hard to tell the real from the fake. Andy Warhol's Marilyn Monroe series is another example. Warhol repeatedly reproduced Marilyn Monroe's image using silkscreen techniques, creating mass-produced works. In the process, Monroe's real image or personality disappeared, and her image became commercialized, transforming into a mechanically reproduced form. As reproduction continued, Monroe's original image and personality were diluted, and only the reproduced images were consumed and recognized by the public. Through this process of replication, Warhol sought to show that the copy could become a more significant, independent entity than the original. Chapter 5: Transhumanism. Transhumanism is a contemporary philosophy that seeks to overcome human physical, mental, and intellectual limitations through science and technology. The term transhumanism was coined by biologist Julian Huxley in 1957, combining trans, meaning beyond, and human. From a transhumanist perspective, the meaning of life is found in the process of overcoming human limitations, expanding capabilities through technology, and evolving. My purpose in life, and the purpose of our lives, is to create more and more knowledge, appreciate it, and move toward greater order. Ray Kurzweil. Just as existentialist thinkers emphasized human freedom and choice, transhumanism asserts that humans should have the freedom to transcend their physical and mental limitations through technology. Also, similar to some postmodernist thinkers who argue that fixed boundaries should be dismantled and deconstructed, transhumanist thinkers believe that the traditional boundaries between humans and machines, or humans and technology, should gradually be dismantled. They argue that the essence of humanity and the essence of machines will merge, making these boundaries increasingly blurred. Transhumanists also consider the potential for virtual reality to complement or even replace physical reality. In a situation where people live in virtual reality through digital avatars and no longer prioritize physical reality, this could be seen as a complete manifestation of simulacra. Chapter 6: Summary of Modern Philosophical Trends. Philosophy developed around discussions of God and absolute truth until the 20th century. Philosophers of this period sought universal and fixed truths, aiming to provide objective and general standards for human existence, morality, and social norms. However, in the 20th century, philosophy underwent a dramatic transformation. It rejected absolute and universal truths and began emphasizing the subjectivity and diversity of human experience. Additionally, the perspective that all things are relative, fluid, and that boundaries are ambiguous began to dominate, deconstructing the fixed meanings and structures of the past. This shift laid an important foundation for the development of transhumanist thought and had a profound impact on society and culture. This influence continues to deeply shape our lives today. Chapter 7: Preparing for the Era of Singularity. When automobiles first appeared at the end of the 19th century, people responded negatively, feeling fear and anxiety. Due to concerns about safety, fear of speed, social changes, and distrust of technology, regulatory laws for automobiles were enacted. For about 2,000 years, horses and carriages were the main means of transportation, but as automobiles began replacing them, carriage drivers and manufacturers feared losing their jobs. Initially, they were shocked and had difficulty adapting, but as the automobile industry became widespread, the carriage industry gradually declined and related jobs changed to fit the new reality. Over time, public perception shifted, and automobiles became an essential mode of transportation. Now, just a few years after artificial intelligence was introduced to the public, some people view transhumanism positively, while many others express concerns and anxiety about its radical aspects. One of the main concerns is the loss of jobs. These anxieties are a natural response, and people are likely to adapt to the new reality over time. To prepare for the arrival of the Singularity era, it's important to accept that anxiety and concern are natural, temporary emotions that others also feel. Minimizing internal turmoil by letting these confusing emotions pass with minimal resistance is key. Instead of reacting emotionally, it's crucial to strengthen the inner strength needed to adapt flexibly and actively to external changes. Additionally, it's necessary to clarify one's role amid the change, ensuring not to be swayed by external transformations. To do this, actively acquiring technology and wisdom, seeking creative ways to apply them, and providing real value to oneself and others are essential. Of course, the possibility of a dystopian scenario leading to human extinction cannot be ruled out. However, instead of acting out of frustration and fear, maintaining an equanimous mindset that everything eventually passes, and preparing for the future through productive and constructive work is more effective. Chapter 8. Spiritual Perspective. 1. The difference between science and spirituality. From a scientific and rational perspective, humanity is advancing, and the arrival of the Singularity is seen as an achievement that highlights human greatness. Additionally, technological progress appears to be expanding infinitely, opening endless possibilities. However, from a spiritual perspective, everything happening in the world is neither progress nor regression. From an absolute viewpoint that transcends space and time, there is no distinction between past, present, and future. All things in the world are just fleeting moments. If one were to look at humanity from the edge of the universe, the size of humans would be so small that they would essentially be non-existent, akin to a state of nothingness. In comparison to the omnipotence of God, who created space and time, human existence and all accomplishments are like converging to zero. They are merely faint traces at a level that hardly exists. Ultimately, science and spirituality view the same reality through different lenses. Science dreams of infinite expansion, praising the will to overcome human limitations, while spirituality sees everything returning to one ultimate essence or converging into zero, into a state of nothingness. This perspective brings the realization that all human efforts and achievements, in the infinite flow of time and existence, are ultimately at the level of an invisible tiny point. When one experiences the transcendent God, who watches over all things behind the scenes, there is often a sense of dizziness due to his greatness. When having such a non-physical, spiritual experience, science no longer seems as great as it once did. Just as humans use a spoon as a tool, science is simply one of the many tools through which God expresses himself. Chapter 9. Spiritual Perspective Number 2. The Rapid Shift in Thought. Some people with a modern rationalist perspective view spirituality as an irrational belief that hinders societal progress and should be discarded. For most people born after the rise of postmodernism, spirituality may seem like an obstacle to progress and a remnant of irrational thinking. In the 5,000 years of human history since the invention of writing, over 4,800 years were dominated by ideas centered on God and absolute truth. However, since the early 20th century, discussions about God gradually faded, marking a phenomenon that has lasted only about 100 years. Does this mean that all of humanity's intellectual and spiritual endeavors concerning God and absolute truth over the past 4,800 years are meaningless and worthless? The rapid shift in thought over the last century can be compared to a car suddenly veering off course after driving straight on a highway at a constant speed. Just as the car may twist or be pushed out of the lane due to inertia when the steering wheel is sharply turned, the human mind, too, has lost its balance and is experiencing confusion in the midst of this radical change. There is a need to integrate the insights of theology and spirituality with modern perspectives. Through this, we can connect the wisdom of both tradition and the modern age. Chapter 10, Spiritual Perspective 3, Strengthening Spiritual Beliefs. People who believe in a spiritual world that transcends reason and science may face challenges from others with different beliefs and perspectives. In such situations, we can remember a time when we also believed that neither God nor the spiritual world existed. And we can understand and fully embrace those who criticize or mock my beliefs. Furthermore, the realization that I could be wrong, and that's okay, helps soften the egoic attachment to always being right, leading to becoming a more mature being with a higher level of consciousness. Additionally, by respecting modern philosophy and various contemporary thoughts, and actively embracing what can be learned and developing beneficial aspects, we can strengthen our spiritual beliefs. From a spiritual perspective, those who deny God's existence are still seen as perfectly functioning beings within God's plan. We all play our roles in God's vast order, and both believers and non-believers are beautiful creations existing for God. What we perceive as reality is like a fleeting dream, and all of this is just a journey to discover God and gain enlightenment. Today, scientific technology has advanced to the point where it is indistinguishable from magic or supernatural powers. If science creates a world where everything becomes possible, the need for God or spirituality may diminish. As a result, those who hold spiritual beliefs may face more difficulty in maintaining them. Nevertheless, instead of viewing everything negatively, we can choose to find the positive side and embrace it as an opportunity. For example, if we creatively and consciously use artificial intelligence and technology as tools to enhance spirituality, spiritual beliefs will be further strengthened. The remarkable development of science and technology also falls within God's providence and order, and through it, we can achieve deeper enlightenment and spiritual growth. Science is the knowledge of the external world, while spirituality is the wisdom of the inner world. Science and spirituality do not necessarily need to oppose each other. They can complement one another and form a beneficial relationship.